friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mansa, and in today's video we're taking a little break from my sweets, and I'm going to be sharing with you one of my favorite childhood meals, and it is a shepherd's pie. Now we're going to tweak it a little bit because I didn't have any lamb, so we're going to be using beef, so you might want to call it a cottage pie. Anywho, without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, friends, so we're going to start off by making our filling. Now on a skillet, I am going to be using a little bit of olive oil, maybe about 1 to 2 tablespoons, no more than that. This is just to get it started so that once we add a meat, it will be ready to render its own fat. And don't worry about it, we're going to skim off all the excess fat. So once my oil heats up a little bit, I'm going to add in my ground beef. This is 1 pound of ground beef. Again, a typical shepherd's pie would need ground lamb, but I did not have any ground lamb. I just have the stew cuts, and I did not feel like deboning and doing all that. So we're going to be using ground beef today. So all you want to do is just start breaking that up and start the browning process for it. And as you can see, a few minutes in, it has already started browning a little bit. Make sure you keep stirring, and I'm just cooking on medium-high heat. Now to that, you would need to add some onions and some garlic. Here I have crushed about 5 cloves of garlic, and I have here 1 small bulb of red onions, or if you want to call it yellow onions, because I got a comment from somebody fighting me for calling it red onions. It was so funny to me, and they were so serious about it. It was a long comment. I was like, dude, call it yellow, purple. You know what I'm talking about. Let's moving on, okay? So add the onions and the garlic into your meat. And now I'm ready to start seasoning up this baby. And I'm going in with my Knorr chicken bouillon seasoning. You could just use salt. I'm also going to go in with some ground black pepper. If you have the fresh grinder, by all means go for that. It is always better. So I'm adding a little bit of that. Add to your heart desire. I cannot tell you how much of these spices to use. I always want to leave it up to you guys. I would list everything that I'm using today, but you would have to use your spices to your own preference. Now I created a little hole in the middle right there, and to that I will be adding some tomato paste. This is my favorite brand, Hunt's. I love it. You would need about 1 to 2 tablespoons. I actually use 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. This tomato paste is going to add a lot of complex flavor, and also add a little bit of thickness to this filling that we're trying to make, because it's going to be more like a sauce. So just keep stirring it with the ground beef and everything you have in that skillet, and let me tell you, it looks so good. Now quickly, my beef, I don't buy beef from the store, like from Walmart or any other place. We get a whole cow, like a farm-raised cow, and we split it with my friends. Now, I'm going to be adding some crushed red bell peppers. This is about 1 whole red bell pepper. So I already always have these pre-made in my refrigerator, so I just use that in there. So if you don't have that, just take 1 red bell pepper and just crush it and add it in there. I promise you, that's red bell pepper mixed with that tomato paste adds so much complexity, and just of course we're gonna go in with some chili powder. Again, use as much spice as you can tolerate. I like a little bit of that kick. Of course, I'm gonna be going with some paprika. This is not hot at all, because so you can use as much as you want, and it's gonna enhance the beautiful red color that we got going on. So go ahead and just keep stirring. You can see, man, editing this video made me so hungry. It looks so beautiful, so perfect. If this is your first time on this channel, you are absolutely welcome. My name is Mansa, and I like to share a lot of food videos, so please consider joining. Now I'm going to be adding some vegetables. I prefer to use frozen vegetables, but by all means do use what you have. If you have fresh vegetables, go for it. I always like to use frozen peas and carrots. That's all I want to add. I see some people adding corn. I don't prefer corn in this type of meal. So I use about 1 cup of that, of the vegetables. You can use more if you want more veggies in there. So just keep stirring that. Oh, and by the way, I have already skimmed out the excess fat. I forgot to mention that. Please skim out the excess fat. You don't want to eat all of that and get yourself all clogged up in there. So now it is time to add a liquid. I am going in with water. If you have beef broth or chicken broth, you can use that. I just have water. I'm going in with that, and don't worry, my flavors are not going to be compromised. This is well seasoned. Now, once you add your liquid, go ahead and add 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour. I missed the footage for that. I guess I must not have hit record while I was doing it, but you want to add the flour. What the flour does is act as a binder and keep everything together and not falling apart. It just makes the perfect filling. Now, you want to taste for salt, and I'm going in with a little bit of salt in there. Now, for spices, I'm going in with some crushed rosemary. I really like it. You could use fresh as well. I'm also going in with some thyme. Love it. Now, another ingredient that I consider a must-have in this recipe is some Worcestershire sauce, or whatever name you want to call it. I have so many variations of this name. So you want to add this sauce. This sauce is a very complex sauce. It is so good for marinades and for meals like this. I added in my chili, and it is just so delicious, and it's just different from everything else out there. So you want to add a good amount of that. I added about 2 to 3 tablespoons of the good Worcestershire sauce. And you guys, by this time, just cut down your fire to really low and just let it simmer for an additional couple of minutes, and your filling is done. You do not want it to dry up. You want it to retain some of that moisture. And always adjust your spices. This was just me going in and adjusting some of my spices. I just needed more heat. But again, use your spices to your own tolerance. And that's it. You want to keep it as moist as possible because it's still going to hit the oven once we layer it with our mashed potatoes. So this is what it looks like. And I went ahead and just turned off my stove because I'm using a cast iron skillet, and it does retain a lot of residual heat. So this is what it looks like. This is the finished product of a filling, and man, it looks so beautiful. So now we're gonna go ahead and start working on mashed potatoes, and of course it's gonna be homemade. Now in my pot, I have here about 2 pounds of potatoes. I feel like it was a little bit more, but I like potatoes a lot, and it gets me so filled up. So I guess you could use between 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of potatoes. Just went ahead and peeled it up, and I'm just adding water. We all know how to boil potatoes. I'm not going in depth. So make sure you add some salt. That way the potatoes don't come out all bland and looking at you. If you're enjoying this video, please go ahead and give your girl a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Now, once our potatoes are done, I always like to go in with a fork and just test it and make sure that the fork can easily go through it and break apart. And once we get that, we are done. I'll go ahead and strain that water, and now I am ready to start mashing it. Now, this right here, I needed some elbow grease. I was regretting why I did not use my mixer, but I didn't feel like doing all that. So to my potatoes, I'm going to add some my Kerrygold butter, and that is salted butter. So I went and added in half a stick of butter, which is an equivalent of 4 tablespoons of butter. It's salted butter, by the way. So just go ahead and mash it while the potatoes are really nice and hot. Now, to loosen it up a little bit, because we want it to be nice and smooth, you can use any liquid. You can use either some buttermilk, which is what I'm going to be using today, or you can use whole milk or any type of milk you have at home. So here goes in my 1/3 cup of buttermilk, and you would also need 1 egg yolk. This would act as a binder for the mashed potatoes, and it would just be so perfect and contribute to that golden brown color we're looking for once we bake this. So now I am going to add a little bit more salt. I just tasted it as I go, and I just felt like I needed a little bit more salt. Now, one thing I like to add to my mashed potatoes, which you don't have to, is some garlic powder. I just love the taste that it gives to it, so I just added a little bit. And now you just want to go ahead and mash this or whip it, whatever tool you're using. Make sure that it's nice and smooth, and this is what my finished product looks like. Now it is time to assemble, and I'm using a 3-liter dish. I would put all the specifications in the description box below. You can use any casserole dish of your choice. I do not recommend a 9x13 because it's going to be too thin of a layer. You can even go with a bowl smaller than mine. I still felt like mine was a little too big, but that was what I had. So just go ahead and on the bottom layer, we're going to do meat sauce. This is our filling. It looks really good. So just try to make it as even as possible, just so we can layer it and make it look really pretty. And once we get that all leveled in, we will now go in and add mashed potatoes as a top layer. And let me tell you, this right here, like I said, brings so many childhood memories. This is actually one of the very first meals that I learned to make as a teenager. So it is dear to my heart and I love it. I usually would eat it with a salad on the side, and I'll be so nice and full for the potatoes. So once we have the potatoes all dumped in there, mashed potatoes, we're going to go ahead with a fork or spoon just to even it out, because we're going to be baking this. Remember, it got raw eggs in it, so we got to bake this. We do not want to get sick. So I'm just using the back of a spoon to level it out as much as possible so that it bakes more evenly. And then I would top it off the cherry on the cake, baby. We're going to be using here, this is mild cheddar. It's always better if you have a block of cheese and you just freshly grated yourself. But we all about simplicity. If you don't have that, by all means, just use the already grated cheese. If that's what you have in your pantry or your refrigerator, it would work just as well. So cheese it up to your heart desire. And now once we get that all in, we are ready to bake. My oven is already preheated at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I am ready to pop this in there, and we're going to be baking today for 30 minutes. Now, once we get that out, I would also give you another tip. If you want more of a golden brown color on the top, you know, once we have that cheese on there, it's just perfect if you have the little bit of charring. I suggest once it's that 30-minute mark, or maybe do it for 25 minutes, cut off your oven and then turn on your top grill, your broil, and do it for like 3 minutes. Make sure you keep an eye on it. It's gonna, if you don't keep an eye on it, it's gonna burn the top of that cheese. You don't want that. So that's what I did here for just 2 minutes, and I got the perfect color. Now I'm gonna let it sit for a while before I cut it. So I let it sit for almost an hour, because the more it sits, the more it forms. Mine was still very warm, so you would see it's still really soft, but I did not have time. I have to get this video out. But the more you let it sit, the more it's going to form, and it will be easy for you to pick it out. And this is what it looks like, you guys. I am going to make sure that I scoop out as much of that filling as possible. As you can see, it is not dry. It really stayed juicy, because I made my filling not dry. It was still very moist and juicy from all of that broth that was in there. And look how perfect that is. Super juicy. The beef filling is so good. If you have lamb and you like lamb, by all means go for that ground lamb option. It is so good. And y'all, my cheese on the top had a little bit of crust on it, and y'all know me, I'm a crust kind of girl. It was so good. I kept peeling up the top of the pie with the cheese on it. So good. Mashed potatoes are super soft. And again, all the ingredients I used today will be listed in the description box below. Click anywhere on the title of the video. It usually will have a small downward arrow towards the right. Once you click on it on the title of the video, it would expand, and that is your description box. I get a lot of questions about it, and I hope you guys get to try this recipe. And if you do love it, let me know. Leave me a comment down below, and I will see y'all in my next video. Until then, y'all stay safe. I love you all.